I had just watched my daughter-in-law walk through the sliding doors of O'Hare with her rolling suitcase and her phone already pressed to her ear. She didn't look back. She never looks back. My grandson Eli was in the back seat. He's 10 years old, all elbows and big opinions, and he had been quiet the whole drive from Naperville. That alone should have told me something. Eli is never quiet. I pulled away from the departure terminal and merged into the airport traffic. I reached back and squeezed his knee. "You want to stop for a burger on the way home, buddy?" He didn't answer right away. "Grandpa." His voice was small. "Wrong, Grandpa, we can't go back to the house." I laughed. I actually laughed. "What do you mean we can't go home? The Cubs game starts at 7. I'm serious." He leaned forward between the seats. His face was right there beside my shoulder, and when I glanced at him in the mirror, I saw his eyes, red-rimmed. He'd been crying quietly for the last 20 minutes, and I hadn't even noticed. Some grandfather I am. Ailey. "What's going on?" "I heard them," he whispered. "Last night. I was supposed to be asleep, but I got up for water. The kitchen light was on and the door wasn't all the way closed." He paused. "Dad was on the phone. He was talking really quiet, but I could hear him through the crack. I put my hazards on and pulled to the side of the road just past the exit ramp. Traffic roared past us. I turned around to face him properly. "Tell me exactly what you heard, son." He swallowed. He looked at his sneakers. He said the papers were almost ready. He said once Grandma was on that plane, there'd be nothing to stop them. He said, Eli's voice dropped even smaller, he said you'd never see it coming. He said you trusted him too much, and that was going to be the thing that finished you. The cars kept rushing past. A semi shook the whole truck as it thundered by. I sat there with my 10-year-old grandson, looking at me with those wet eyes, and I felt something I hadn't felt since I was 32 years old, and a business partner tried to steal everything I built. A cold, slow drop in the chest, like the bottom of something giving way. My son's name is Damon. He's 41 years old. I put him through college. I gave him a job. I handed him the keys to the warehouse operation when my knees started going bad and I couldn't walk the floor 12 hours a day anymore. I trusted him with the books, the contracts, the relationships I'd spent 30 years building. His wife's name is Stephanie. She came into our family 8 years ago with a bright smile and strong opinions, and I thought she was exactly what Damon needed. Someone with fire. Someone to push him. I was right about the fire. I was wrong about where she'd aim it. I did not drive home. I drove to the parking lot of a hardware store 3 miles from the house, and I sat there with Eli and I asked him to tell me everything he remembered, every single word, and he did. He is a serious boy, my Eli. He takes after his great-grandmother, my mother, who could remember a phone number she heard once 40 years ago. He had heard Damon say the old man signs everything I put in front of him, and once we file the transfer he won't have any legal standing, and just keep him occupied while I finalize it with the attorney. I asked Eli who Damon was talking to. He said he didn't know the name, but it wasn't Stephanie's voice answering. He was sure of that. It was a man. I sat with that for a long time. I have a company. Hargrove Industrial Supply, incorporated in Illinois, 33 years old. It started as a single panel van and a storage unit in Joliet when I was 29 years old, running industrial hardware and fasteners to small machine shops that couldn't afford the big distributor minimums. I drove the van myself for 6 years. I ate sandwiches over the steering wheel and I slept on the couch in my office, and I missed things I can never get back. Eli's father was born during those years and I wasn't there enough. I know that. I've lived with it. But the company survived. More than survived. We have 11 trucks now, 2 warehouses, 90-something accounts across the Midwest. When I headed Damon Operational Control 3 years ago, the book showed $4 million in annual revenue. Last year it was 6. I built that. From nothing. From a van and a storage unit and sandwiches over a steering wheel, and my own son was trying to take it from me. I looked at Eli in the rearview mirror. "You did the right thing telling me," I said. "I need you to understand that. You did exactly right. Are you mad at me?" "No, buddy. I'm not mad at you. Not even a little bit. Are you going to be okay? I looked at this 10-year-old boy sitting there with his Cubs hat sideways and his face still wet from crying, and I thought, that is the bravest person in this truck right now. By a long way. Yeah, I said, we're going to be okay. But I need you to do something for me. I need you to go home with me tonight and act normal. Can you do that? Can you eat dinner and watch the game and not let your dad know that you talked to me? He thought about it. He nodded slowly. Yeah, I can do that. Good man. I drove us home. The porch light was on. Damon's car was in the driveway. When we walked in, he was at the kitchen island on his laptop, and he looked up with that easy grin he has, the one that looks so much like my mother's. It still catches me off guard sometimes. Hey, Pop. Good drive? Fine, I said. Traffic was light. He looked at Eli. You hungry, bud? Yeah, Eli said. Cool as anything. I watched my son flip the laptop shut and start pulling leftovers from the fridge, and I thought about what I knew and what I didn't know, and I decided I needed to know a lot more before I did anything at all. I called my attorney the next morning from my car in the parking garage at the post office, where I knew Damon wouldn't happen to walk by. Her name is Claire Maddox, and she has been my attorney for 19 years. She is not a woman who panics. When I told her what Eli had heard, there was a long silence, and then she said, "Okay, tell me what access Damon has." I told her everything. Signatory authority on the operating account, access to the corporate filing records, his name on the operational lease for the Joliet warehouse as facility manager. Has he ever asked you to sign anything recently that you didn't fully read? I thought about it. There had been something 3 months ago. A stack of documents. Damon said they were updated vendor agreements and an insurance renewal. I had signed where he pointed. I had not read them carefully. I had trusted him. Possibly, I said, I'm going to need you to get me copies of everything you've signed in the last 18 months. Quietly. Can you do that? Yes. Don't confront him. Don't change anything. Don't access the accounts differently than you normally would. I need a few days to understand what we're actually looking at. She paused. And Walt, I know, I said. I know. My name is Walter Hargrove, and I'm 64 years old, but the name in the file was a different one. Gerald, actually. The name my own father called me when I was in trouble. I'll get to that. I did what Claire told me. I came home that evening, and I ate dinner with my son and my grandson, and I helped Eli with his math homework, and I went to bed at 10:30 like every other night. And I lay in the dark, and I stared at the ceiling, and I thought about 33 years. The next morning, I got to the office early before Damon arrived. I made copies of everything in the filing cabinet. I forwarded emails going back 2 years to a personal account Damon didn't know existed. I found 3 documents in the stack from 3 months ago that I did not remember reading. One of them was a limited liability operating agreement for a new entity, Hargrove Supply Partners, LLC. Damon's name was on it, as sole managing member. My signature was at the bottom of page 4. I sat there for a long time looking at that page. I thought about the stack of papers Damon had put in front of me, slightly apologetic about the volume of them, saying the insurance broker needed everything by end of day. I had been on a call with a customer in Cincinnati. I had signed quickly. I had trusted my son. I photographed every page and drove to Claire's office and slid the folder across her desk without saying a word. She read it. She read it again. Then she set it down and folded her hands. He's been moving your accounts receivable through this new entity, she said. Slowly. Small amounts at first. The vendors wouldn't notice because the name is similar enough. He's been doing this for at least 14 months. How much? I asked. She told me. I won't write the number here. I will say it was more than the van and the storage unit and 6 years of sandwiches over a steering wheel. It was more than that by a significant amount. I drove home and I sat in my truck in the driveway for 45 minutes before I went inside. Here's what I want you to understand about what happened next. I am 64 years old. I was a Marine for 4 years before I started the company. I have negotiated with people who were trying to ruin me before. I know what it feels like to be in a fight where losing is not an option. But this was my son. That changes things in ways I did not fully expect. The anger was there. Of course it was. But under the anger was something I don't have a clean word for. A hollowing out, like someone had reached into something I thought was solid and found it hollow all the way through. I had been looking at Damon's face my whole life and seeing my mother's eyes, and it turned out those eyes had been looking at me and calculating. I gave myself 2 days to feel that. Just 2 days. Then I set it aside, and I got to work. The man Damon had been calling, the one whose voice Eli had heard through the kitchen door. Claire found him through the filing records for Hargrove Supply Partners. His name was on the registered agent paperwork. A man named Cobb who had a small CPA practice in Schaumburg and a history of filing LLCs for people who had reasons to want their money invisible. Claire headed that information to a forensic accountant she trusted. He found the rest. Damon and Cobb had been planning to complete the asset transfer before the end of the fiscal year. They had already reached out to 2 of my largest accounts, framing it as a change of business structure under Damon's management. The customers had no reason to question it. Damon was the man they talked to every week. He was the face of the company to most of them. I had made him that on purpose. I had wanted him to grow into it. I had made him exactly effective enough to take everything from me. Claire filed a fraud injunction without notifying Damon. She froze the new entity's accounts and flagged the transfers with the state attorney's office. She also had a conversation with the 2 customers Damon had already approached. Both of them called me directly after. One of them, the man I've done business with for 22 years, said, "Walt, I had a bad feeling. I almost called you 3 weeks ago." "I wish you had," I said, "but I understand. He's my son. You had every reason to think it was legitimate." The silence on the line was the kind that carries a lot of weight. I want to tell you about the week I stayed in the house after I knew everything. After Claire had the injunction in place and the forensic accountant had his report and the state filing office had been notified, I stayed in that house for 1 more week. I ate dinner across from Damon every night. I watched him read Eli a story before bed. I watched him kiss Stephanie on the cheek when she got home from her spin class. He did not know I knew. And I want to tell you what that week felt like because I think it's important. It did not feel like triumph. It did not feel like triumph. It did not feel like strategy. It felt like grief. Every evening meal was an act of mourning, something I was losing in a way I could not stop or undo, because even if I got every dollar back, even if the courts gave me everything and punished him appropriately, I was never going to have a son who hadn't done this. That was already gone. Eli would come down in the mornings and look at me over a cereal bowl, and I would give him the smallest nod. Our signal. And he would nod back and eat his cereal and be a 10-year-old boy. And he was handling it better than I was. On a Thursday in October, I asked Damon to meet me at the Joliet warehouse. I told him I wanted to walk the floor, talk through some Q4 projections, have a normal father and son afternoon, the way we used to before his knees went bad and mine went worse. He came. Of course he came. Of course he came. He still thought everything was moving according to his plan. We walked the floor. I showed him the new racking system we'd installed in Bay 3. We talked about a new account I was considering in Rockford. He was relaxed. He was easy with me. He has always been easy with me, and I had taken that as closeness for 41 years. And sitting here now, I understand it was just confidence. He never thought I'd see it coming. We sat down in the back office, the one with the old metal desk I've had since the storage unit days. I keep it on purpose. To remember, I put a folder on the desk between us. "What's this?" he said. "Open it." He opened it. I watched his face move through the pages, the LLC filing, the transfer records, the forensic account summary, Claire's injunction notice. He went through it slowly, and his expression changed in layers, like weather moving across a lake. Surprise first, then calculation, then something I had never seen on my son's face before. Fear. "Pop, don't," I said. "Not yet. I want you to finish reading," he finished. He set the folder down. He looked at me. "I can explain. You probably can," I said. "You're smart. You have my mother's mind, and I used to think that was the best thing about you. I'm going to ask you one question, and I want you to think before you answer, because your answer is going to determine the next 30 years of your life. Do you understand me?" He nodded. His throat moved. Was Stephanie part of this? He looked at the desk. "No," he said. "She doesn't know anything about it." I watched him for a long moment. I believed him. I've spent enough time reading people across tables to know when a man is lying and when he's ashamed. That was shame. "Okay," I said. "Pop," I said. "I don't know how to." He stopped again. "Why?" I asked. Just the one word. He was quiet for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was different. Smaller. Like a much younger version of him had climbed into the chair. "Because I thought you'd never retire," he said. "I thought I was going to be standing behind you forever and you'd never actually let go. And I thought if I built something parallel, something that was mine, you couldn't take it back. You couldn't change your mind about me." He looked up. "I know how that sounds." "It sounds like you made a choice," I said. "A choice you knew was wrong, and you made it anyway." He didn't argue that. "You stole from me, Damon. You forged my intent, if not my signature. You went around me to my customers and you tried to take 33 years of my work and file it under your name." I kept my voice level. "It took more effort than anything I've done in recent memory. And your son," I stopped. "Your son is the one who told me. Your 10-year-old boy heard you on the phone and he came to me because he knew what you were doing was wrong. He's 10 years old and he had better instincts than you." Something broke in Damon's face at that. Whatever had been holding it together since he'd opened the folder. He put his hands over his face and he cried. Not the way men cry to manipulate a room, the way they cry when they've finally seen what they've become. I let him. I looked at the old metal desk. I thought about the storage unit and the van and the sandwiches. I thought about Eli's face in the rearview mirror outside O'Hare. I thought about Claire's voice on the phone saying a number I won't write down here. When Damon lifted his head, I said, "Here is what is going to happen." He signed a full restitution agreement that afternoon. Every transferred dollar restored. The LLC dissolved. A formal correction filed with the state. Claire had the documents prepared in advance. I'd told her what I thought would happen in that office, and she had not disagreed. Cobb, the CPA, was a different matter. Claire referred that to the state attorney. The fraud investigation is ongoing. I was not in a position to protect a man I did not know at the expense of every other business owner he might do this to next. Damon is no longer an officer of the company. That was non-negotiable. He knows it. He accepted it without argument, which told me something I needed to know about whether there was still someone worth saving underneath all of it. He is not in prison. I made decisions about how to file the reports that kept certain things in the civil rather than criminal category. I want to be honest about that. I made that choice for Eli. A boy needs his father to be a man he can eventually look at again. I don't know if Damon will become that man. But I wanted the door to stay open a crack. Whether he walks through it is up to him. Stephanie found out 2 days later. I had nothing to do with how she found out. Damon told her himself, which was the first decent thing he'd done in 14 months. She called me and we talked for a long time. She was furious and heartbroken in equal measure, and I told her the truth. I did not blame her. She had been kept outside it, just like I had been. She was not his accomplice. She was just his wife, and now she was the one who had to decide what that meant going forward. I told her that whatever she decided, Eli was going to be fine. I was going to make sure of that personally. I want to tell you about the night after I met Damon in the warehouse. I drove back to the house I'd lived in for 26 years, and I sat on the back porch in the dark. It was cold enough that I could see my breath. I had a glass of bourbon I didn't really drink. I just held it. I thought about my father, who built a hardware store in Decatur, Illinois, from nothing and ran it for 38 years. He died when I was 27, 2 years before I started the company, and I have thought about him every year since in ways I can't fully explain. He was not a soft man. He was not easy to grow up with, but he was honest in a way that cost him things, and he never pretended that being honest was easy or that it always paid. He just did it anyway. I thought about what he would have said if it had been me. If I had done to him what Damon did to me, I don't think he would have cried. I don't think he would have put his hands over his face. I think he would have looked at me with a very specific kind of disappointment that I would have felt in my chest for the rest of my life, and then he would have done exactly what needed to be done, no more and no less. I tried to do that. I don't know if I got it right. It's February now. The company is fine. Better than fine, actually. Removing the slow drain that Cobb and Damon had been running over 14 months has improved the numbers in ways that became obvious the moment Claire's accountant started auditing the full picture. I hired a new operations director, a woman named, well, she's not in this story, she's just good at her job, and the floor runs better than it has in years. Damon is living in an apartment in Naperville. He and Stephanie are working things out, slowly, in the way that couples do when something seismic has moved through and left everything rearranged. I have no opinion about whether they make it. That's theirs to navigate. Billy comes over on Thursdays and we watch whatever sport is in season, and I help him with his homework and he eats everything in my refrigerator. Last week he told me that he'd explained the whole thing to his best friend at school, who had apparently said, "Your grandpa sounds like a superhero." Eli had told his friend, "He's not a superhero, he's just my grandpa." I'm choosing to take that as a compliment. Here's what I know at 64 that I did not know at 29. Loyalty is not the same thing as trust. You can be loyal to someone without handing them the keys to everything you've built. I loved my son, and I trusted him. And I confused those two things for 30 years, and the difference between them nearly cost me everything. And the thing that saved me was not my attorney, who is excellent, or my Marine training, which atrophies but never fully leaves. The thing that saved me was a 10-year-old boy who got up for a glass of water in the middle of the night and heard something that scared him badly enough to tell me the truth, even though he knew it would hurt me. He was afraid I'd be angry. He was more afraid of staying quiet. I've been thinking about that a lot lately. The kind of courage it takes to say the hard thing to someone you love. It's easy to talk about moral clarity when the cost is abstract. When the cost is watching your grandfather's face fall, that's a different kind of test. He passed it. At 10 years old, he passed it. I want to close by saying this because I've thought about it for 4 months now and I think I've finally got it right. There is a version of this story where I got angry and confrontational and tipped my hand before I had the evidence, and Damon and Cobb moved faster and got the key filings done before Claire could stop them, and I lost the company. That version is very close to the version that actually happened. The margin was weeks, maybe days. What kept me from blowing it up too soon was not strategy, it was grief. I was so sad about what I'd found out that I moved slowly, and moving slowly turned out to be the right thing. Sometimes the things that feel like weakness are the things that keep you standing. I'm still standing. The Cubs are still my team even though they are, again, testing my patience. The warehouse in Joliet has new racking in Bay 3 and a good operations director and 90-something accounts that know the name Hargrove means what it always meant. And every Thursday a 10-year-old boy comes over and eats everything in my refrigerator, and I am every single time the luckiest man in Illinois. If this story meant something to you, if you've ever had to trust a quiet voice over a comfortable lie, I hope you'll leave a comment and let me know where you're watching from. I read every one. And if you know someone who needs to hear that it's never too late to stand back up, please share this with them. Thank you for staying with me until the end. I've been sitting with this story for 4 months now, trying to figure out what the through line is, what the thing is that connects the beginning of it, a boy whispering in a back seat outside O'Hare, to the end of it, which is me on a back porch in October, holding a glass of bourbon I never drank, watching my breath in the cold air and trying to figure out who I am, now that everything I thought I knew about my family has been rearranged. Here's what I keep coming back to. Damon didn't become someone who would steal from his father overnight. That's not how it works. It was a slow accumulation of small decisions, each one a little worse than the last, each one made easier by the one before it. That's how people lose themselves. Not in one dramatic moment, but in 100 quiet ones, where they choose the convenient thing over the honest thing and tell themselves it doesn't really count. And I wasn't blameless in that either. I handed him authority without accountability. I trusted him because trusting him was easier than checking. I confused loyalty with oversight, And I let that confusion sit for years because examining it would have meant admitting something uncomfortable about the kind of father I'd been during those early van and storage unit years when I was building the company and not building him. Cause and effect doesn't care about your intentions. It just runs the numbers. I made choices. Damon made choices. Cobb made choices. And all of those choices added up to a Thursday afternoon in a warehouse in Joliet where my son sat across from me and couldn't look me in the eye. What I want to say about Eli is this. He didn't save me because he was fearless. He saved me because he was afraid, and he did it anyway. That's the only kind of courage that actually counts. Not the absence of fear, but the decision to act in spite of it. He was 10 years old and he understood, instinctively, that staying quiet to keep the peace was its own kind of betrayal. That protecting someone you love sometimes means saying the thing that will hurt them. I think about the kind of man Eli is going to be. I think about what it took for him to lean forward between those front seats and say, "Grandpa, we can't go home." I think about how he ate his cereal every morning for a week and gave me that small nod across the table and held the whole weight of it without cracking. That's not nothing. That's character. You either have it or you build it, and it gets built in exactly those moments, when the right thing and the easy thing are pointed in opposite directions and you have to choose. The thing about integrity is that it doesn't announce itself. It shows up in the small, unremarkable moments that nobody's watching. Eli wasn't trying to be brave, he was just trying to be honest with someone he loved. That's all. And that turned out to be everything. I'm 64 years old, and the 10-year-old boy taught me something I should have figured out 30 years ago. The people who protect you are rarely the ones with the most power. They're the ones with the clearest eyes. Listen to them, even when what they're saying is the last thing you want to hear, especially then.